Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping by for another episode of Friday Reads, aka where I talk about all the books I read this week and or plan on reading this weekend. So I'm currently reading two books, one on my Kindle, one on my Kobo, and then I'm listening to an Audible book at the moment. At first I was like shuffling between like books because I just wanted to find a book that can get into a real groove, but I think I found something that I feel like I'm going to finish. I mean, I have no other choice. I paid for it, so like I have to like listen to it. All right, so let's get started. I have my laptop here because I decided to take notes. I wanted to do a little bit of research, and so I have some notes here that I want to get into and read. All the stuff that I did was researched on Google. I'm currently 50% of the way reading The Running Grave by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling. I'm reading this on my Kindle. So Robin and Corbin Stride takes on a new case where they must rescue a young man named Will Endenser from what they believe to be a cult called the Universal Humanitarian Church. Robin goes undercover in order to infiltrate the cult, posing as a curious spectator looking for something new after having her wedding called off. As the man on the outside, Cormoran's job is to interview ex-members and family members of the ex-members with the hopes of finding any kind of evidence that would be deemed sufficient enough to charge the church. The more people he encounters, Strike realizes there is more to the church that meets the public eye. On the inside, the longer Robin's in there, the more she realizes the psychological toll the church has on her. She's having to battle keeping her sanity while also trying to find any information, any inside information she can that can help discredit the church and also retrieve Will. The big theme that just been kind of like all throughout the book in this portion of my reading experience is like the idea of mind control. Now that Robin is inside, she goes through her week pretty much being initiated, where she's being introduced to the church at Chaplain Farm and just the ways that they kind of like do things and how they pretty much operate. After she gets initiated via baptism, I guess, she then starts to like see how things are actually happening and the tactics they're using in order to pretty much cultivate their church, their members, how they're indoctrinating them. One of the things I was able to like find on Google, they talk about social influence, right? So when a crowd influences an individual, it means a person's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors change to match those of the people around them. You see that a lot, especially when I mentioned this last week, where the guy, he was there during the first week. He was deciding whether or not he would actually officially join the church, and he was scared to say no. And if it wasn't for the woman in front of him, he feels like he probably wasn't going to say no. This plays a role a lot in this book, where it's like everyone pretty much has this same kind of like mindset, and if anyone strays a little bit or too far away, they're already there to like give them bullet points from the book The Answer that Jonathan Wastehead wrote, and they're pretty much spewing the same talking points as one another. So for the social influence, it says what this does is creates de-individuation. So in a large group, individuals may lose their self-awareness and personal identity. This can lead to uninhibited, sometimes impulsive or aggressive behaviors they wouldn't normally display alone. They also bring up the bandwagon effect, where people tend to adapt certain behaviors, beliefs, or trends simply because many other people are doing so. They also talk about groupthink, which is individuals may conform their opinions to align with the crowd's consensus, often suppressing their own doubts or independent judgments to maintain harmony. Another thing that I wanted to point out, which pissed me off, I haven't suffered anything. Mazu's dark, crooked eyes contemplated her. Nothing at all? No, nothing. Robin judged the girl to be in her late teens. Her face was reddening slightly under the censorious scrutiny of the circle. My family's never done me any harm, she said. I know some people here have had really awful things happen to them, but I haven't, she repeated with a shrug of her stiff shoulders. Robin could feel the group's animosity towards the girl as surely as if they declared it openly and willed her not to speak again, to no avail. And I don't think it's right to call like parents loving their kids materialist possession, she blurted out. I'm sorry, but I don't think it is. Several group members, including Amandeep, now spoke up at once. Mazu intervened and gestured to Amandeep to continue alone. There's a power dynamic in all conventional family structures, he said. You can't deny there isn't coercion and control, even if it's well intended. Well, little children need boundaries, said the girl. Most of the group now spoke up simultaneously, some of them clearly angry. Vivian, the girl with spiky black hair, who was usually at pains to sound as working class as possible, spoke loudest, and others felt silent to let her carry on. What you call boundaries is the justification for abuse, right? My family's case was abuse. And when you say things like that, you don't just invalidate the experiences of people who have been harmed, actively harmed by their parents' desire to control them. You're perpetuating and probing up the same damn systems of control that some of us are trying to escape, okay? So you haven't suffered, well, bully for you, but maybe listen and learn from people who have, okay? There was much muttering in agreement. Mazu said nothing, letting the group deal with the dissident themselves. For the first time, Robin thought she saw a genuine smile on the woman's face. The girl with the heart-shaped face was openly ostracized that afternoon by other members of Fire Group. Robin, who wished she could have muttered some words of kindness or support, copied the majority and ignored her. That scene like pissed me off. Also, another thing that happens in this book is called social isolation. So it says here, cult leaders portray the outside world as evil and dangerous primarily to enforce social isolation and trigger a fear response. The psychological tactic forces followers to view the group as their only safe haven, making them deeply dependent on the leader for validation, physical protection, and emotional security. So Jonathan, which is the face of the church, and then you have Mazu, which is his partner, but she's the one who is pretty much the one that's orchestrating and operating and just doing like the behind the scenes work. They often repeat to the members about this spiritual war that's like raging on earth that they must win. They make it so that it's the members' responsibility. It's the responsibility of the church and the church members, right, that they come out of this war, this spiritual war, victorious. They also use terms called the materialists, which is like the outside people. They're the outsiders. And then you have the pure spirits, which are the UHC members, and that is what they are trying to obtain. And with that, with them being pure spirit, they can hone abilities. And so like they have a lot of terms that they have to use within the church, and so it's not the word having intercourse, right? It's called spirit bonding. What I'm thinking as I'm as I'm thinking it right now, I feel like the language that's being created is for the purpose of erasing anything that has ties to the outside world. You start to slowly forget, right, the language you previously learned, and that starts to be your frame of thinking, your way of thinking. Having specific vocabulary words, I think that does something to you mentally, where it kind of like creates this enclosure of like how you're supposed to think, what you're supposed to say, the language between the members. It tightens it and it like makes it smaller so that you're only thinking what they want you to think. Us versus them mentality. In-group versus out-group bias. By clearly dividing the world into pure by pure enlightened insiders and corrupt lost outsiders, leaders tap into a fundamental human drive to belong. This creates a powerful shared identity. When followers believe outsiders are hostile, it strengthens internal group cohesion and creates a sense of collective purpose. Fear is a powerful motivator for behavioral compliance and regression. If followers are convinced that the outside world will reject, persecute, or will doom them, they are paralyzed by the thought of leaving. The psychological discomfort and terror associated with the outside keeps followers obedient even when they witness abusive or irrational behavior within the group. When the outside world is labeled dangerous, any information, news, or differing perspectives from non-members are automatically dismissed as lies or temptations. By shutting out external feedback, the cult creates an airtight echo chamber. Followers become unable to objectively evaluate their reality, making them highly suggestible and susceptible to the leader's specific world view. Sleep deprivation and diet. So it says here, cult leaders use restricted, low nutrition diets as a deliberate psychological tool to break down a follower's psychological and mental capacity for independent thought. By inducing chronic exhaustion and cognitive fog, leaders make members highly suggestible and totally dependent on a group for survival and emotional validation. That one of the points in doing that is testing compliance. So leaders often frame restricted eating as a spiritual purification or cleansing process. Demanding strict obedience regarding what, when, and how much followers eat is primarily a test of loyalty. There was like a part in the book that it blew my mind. I was just like, what the freak? Like, I was actually kind of looking at Robin like sideways, like, girl, why did you do that? Like, it was just like, what the heck? But like, we're constantly being told that she's tired, she's exhausted, she doesn't know like the time of day anymore, she doesn't know the date anymore, and they do that deliberately to skew a person's perception on time and reality. In the last book, we kind of get an understanding of how Strike actually feels about Robin, and there being a potential relationship developing between them. In this book, she's dating this guy named Ryan, and Strike hates that. So he has subtle ways where he is in a sense retaliating against Robin and Ryan's relationship. Not outwardly, like he doesn't say anything or whatever, but it's just like internal thoughts that he kind of like has, where like he's jealous. He's obviously jealous. Robin being in a cult doesn't provide enough stakes as high feelings for me. The cult feels boring and uneventful. Sure, she has to sneak out at night, and sometimes that makes me anxious, but I think it's more so coming from the idea of her potentially getting caught. Robin also realizes that she has to start being disobedient in order to be placed in the right group of people in order to get the information she needs, but her fear of being punished is what's keeping her from doing this. This is understandable, but this also prolongs her stay and therefore drags the story along, where she's only receiving things in bits and pieces. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Like I do feel like the story is kind of like dragging a little bit, and it makes me feel like things are not really progressing, even though like she is getting information and that's helping to kind of piece things together for Strike on the outside. I don't know. I guess I feel like I just wanted really bad things to happen, and I guess that speaks to me as a person, but I'm just like, so like this is it. And there are some things that shows that there are bad things that had happened, but once again, like I'm only 50% of the way through. Things can change. This is how I'm feeling right now, but right now it just feels like nothing is really happening, but it does feel like things could potentially get worse. Also too, she does feel like she wants to leave now because mentally she's feeling like she's starting to deteriorate. She's starting to do things that she wouldn't normally do. Okay, so I said I'm so tired of Strike dealing with women that could potentially put their agency at risk of being exposed to the public. He's too old to be getting caught up in the kind of drama that would catch the eye of the tabloids. Yeah, I'm so over it. Like, I'm genuinely so over it. The kind of women that he's choosing kind of feels like something similar to his dad, and even though he hates to admit that that Johnny Rockaby is his dad, they seem to be similar in some ways, if I'm being honest with you. So Robin's desire to appease Strike and show that she's still committed to the agency, I'm so over it. Like, we are like 7 books deep. Like, come on, Robin. I just wish Robin can finally gain some confidence in her abilities and acknowledge her contribution to their investigations. I wonder if this is why she continues to accept tasks that could be harmful to her. I understand that there is a part of her that likes having boots on the ground, but I can't help but wonder if it's also for the sake of adding experience to her resumes in comparison to Strike's military background. So that's pretty much all that I have to say about that so far. I think what I'm expecting moving forward is, like, I don't know, things to just get worse. That's what I would want, because I just feel like if it doesn't get worse, if we don't find like really good solid information, which I'm pretty sure we are, like we like, they need to get enough evidence in order to discredit the church. And so if they're able to get what they're going to get, then I will feel satisfied with the book. I don't know, I feel like I went into the story having like super high expectations, because I wanted to be like really grit and gritty, because it's not like she hasn't done it before. Like, she's gone there before. And so I was just expecting it to be like some crazy stuff. Not to say that I want bad things to happen to Robin, but I just want things to like start getting worse so that it can be more entertaining. I don't know. This sounds horrible, I understand, but it just feels really dry right now. It feels uneventful, and I feel like I would like to see things pick up a bit so that I can have an even more better experience with this book. I'm also reading A Good Person by Kirsten King. I was at the bookstore and I saw this cover by on a different book. I thought that was really interesting. I was like, can that happen? So I'm 40% of the way with this. I like that they tell me how long I have to go. Like, I can literally read the rest of this today if I wanted to, but I can't. A Good Person is about a 29-year-old lady named Lillian who doesn't think too highly of herself. Her desperation for acceptance make her orchestrate and micromanage the kind of person she ought to be in order to be liked by a guy named Henry, who seems to take advantage of her easiness and desperation to please him. As I'm reading it, the question that kind of like constantly came to my mind was, why is Lillian this way? One thing I can say from reading so far is it's her mom. It's her mother. Parents who often constantly approach their children as if something is wrong typically do so out of a mix of anxiety or a hyper focus on correction rather than connection. So you see automatically from the very beginning of the book, Lillian does something wrong and her mom handles the situation the way that she chooses to handle it. So many parents project their own unresolved fears, social anxieties, or perfectionism onto their children because they are terrified of their child failing or being judged by others. They interpret normal age-appropriate behaviors as a problem that needs fixing. In the book, she says, the benefit of my mother's dramatics was she always assumed something horrible had happened, and occasionally she was right. The more we get into the story, we also understand that whenever like Lillian goes through things, she doesn't necessarily, her mother doesn't necessarily deal with them herself. She refers her to like tarot readers. I don't think it's very helpful. And I think it contributes to the madness that's like, you know, festering in her skull. So it says Lillian's relationship with her mother and her referring her to tarot readers when she's feeling down reminds me of Lena Dunham. I don't know if it's because like I've been reading Lena Dunham's like books and listening to her on Audible, and me just understanding like, oh, you know, like she is the way that she is because, you know, how she was raised and like her parents, like it kind of feels like it's the same thing here. So it starts her mom telling Lillian, okay, so her mom telling Lillian that them being a lot for men because it's in their DNA omits the possibility of Lillian ever being able to take accountability for her choices and actions. It excuses her behavior and gives her permission to be the way that she is. Oh yeah. So that whole thing was like kind of crazy to me. Because you see oftentimes in the book, Lillian doesn't take accountability for anything. I think also too, her growing up without a father, I think that plays a role. That usually always does. So I think that could contribute to it as well. And I also said feeling shut out from society. So I looked it up on Google, like what happens, like what does it do to a person psychologically when they feel shut out from society? And it said it erodes self-worth, increases the risk of depression and anxiety, and impairs cognitive function. This extends itself to emotional pain. Social rejection causes a cascade of emotional responses, including sadness, jealousy, and anger, which we see like she pretty much experiences that a good portion of the book. And also too, she isn't getting along with the women at her job. She has a neglectful mother. She's attracted to emotionally distant men. So in the book, which really just kind of like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I kind of like feel her. I feel where she's coming from, not in the sense of like I understand where she's coming from, but I can feel a sense of her vulnerability here. So she says, I missed college, not because I missed socializing or bettering myself through education, but because my life felt wide open at that age. At 29, the directions where my life could go were quickly disappearing. I felt like Sylvia Plath lying under the fig tree, except the branches are dying in front of my eyes. It was too late for so many things. Lillian makes being an unlikable character funny. Although outwardly she's a horrible person, internally she is aware of what's right and wrong. This creates a balance where the story isn't swaying just to one side. This also leaves room in the future for her to reach some kind of resolution, and therefore character development / growth. I also said, although Lillian is horrible, her external world via Jamie, her co-workers, and Henry, they are aware that she's full of herself and that there is something very wrong with her. It makes the story feel like the joke is on her and she's just too oblivious to realize it. So I'm currently listening to The Summer Girlfriend by Kristina Forrest. I was just hip to this, that she had come out with a new book. I also have her other book. I also have Heartsick that I started, but then I was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like for me nowadays, like YA is like a hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. And so I started Heartsick a while back, and maybe it probably was because I wasn't really feeling like reading and all that stuff like that. That could be the contributing factor. But yeah, I just couldn't really get jiggy with it. I'm gonna try to pick it back up sometime later. But I am listening to The Summer Girlfriend on Audible, and I am currently on chapter 3. We're following two perspectives, right? We have the guy, I forgot his name. We have Noel and Jeremiah Smith II. Alright, so Jeremiah Smith II comes from a successful family. His grandfather started this sweets company, this bakery company called Smith Sweets. Right before his grandfather passed away, they got into this back and forth where his grandfather pretty much expressed his disappointment in Jeremiah's actions. So he's been carrying the weight of that guilty conscience ever since, and that also prevents him from wanting to go to the beach house and spend time with his family, even though his mom asks him to come all the time, and he just can't get himself to do it. We also have this young lady named Noelle Lewis, who was kicked out of college her junior year. There was an investigation where they found liquor in her dormitory room. This wasn't her fault. She was forced to have to conceal it because her boyfriend at the time was pressuring her to hold it so that he wouldn't get in trouble. And so when it came time for him to own up and like say like, hey, this is my fault, he backed out. And so she ended up getting kicked out of college. And so now she's pretty much having to work a lot of side jobs in order to get as much money as she can so that she can afford to go back to school. So far it's okay. I feel like, well, I started it last night and I feel like I'm not necessarily really 100% there. Like my intention is not 100% there because I've just was like doing other things, but I'm gonna really try to get in the zone and just like retain the information that I need in order for me to understand what I'm reading. It's about that time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time.